I normally play the mom character, and then you normally play someone younger.
Yeah.
That's what happens often.
But that ship's sailing. I'm going to be 40 soon.
In like 8 years.
9. You're supposed to say 9 years.
Oh, 9 years. Oh.
Yeah.
My name's Alexandra.
And I'm Angelica.
We are Legends of...
This is
Legends of Yesterday. Yup. And if you are new here, welcome. We talk about histories, mysteries, and ghost stories in Florida. Yes, Florida specific, because there's absolutely so much that happens throughout Florida. Throughout these episodes, as you have noticed since episode 1, we will have a cat cam quite often. We have a kitten who is only 5 months old.
It's our in-house demon.
She's so cute though.
She's adorable. She's really cute.
So
are our puppies.
Yes. So, as you guys know, we post these twice a month, every single month. And if you have some personal stories, you're more than welcome to send them in.
Yes.
I would like to get on to what we're talking about. Now, we were recently at the Countdown Improv Festival, which happens in Tampa, Florida, specifically in Ybor City.
It is the largest improv festival in North America. Or so we learned.
This is what we have been told.
This is what we've been told.
All weekend.
Yes. So they really brought in the branding. But it was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was 125 different acts, which was...
Was it 125?
125. It was incredible. And I think there was 1, 2, 3, 4, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, improvisers who watch, and I got this wrong. I think there were like 4 or 5 stages that they were performing in.
There was main stage, solo vela, the side stage. I don't know what the other one. I don't remember what the other one was called. And then there was the Commodore Theater stage, which the Commodore is what Justin and Kelly own.
Yes.
Yes. So Justin and Kelly, they are the runners, the facilitators, the people behind the scenes of the Countdown Improv Festival for like 9 years.
Yeah, for 9 years.
9 years, and next year's their 10-year anniversary, which is pretty cool.
So if you're looking for a vacation next time, we're not being paid at all for this. We just had a great time. So
yeah, we had a really good time. We haven't been to Tampa in years, and it was really fun to go and see the history of everything again. And we went to the Jose Marti Park,
which means we actually left the country. We went to Cuba.
We went to Cuba for literally like 20 minutes.
Yes.
So that was really cool. But talking about Cuba.
Okay.
Oh, yes. So we're going to be talking today because I was inspired by our trip, which talk about improvisation because we just left there, right?
Okay, yeah.
I was inspired by our trip to talk about Ybor City and the creation of Ybor City and its roots. Specifically, you cannot talk about Ybor without talking about cigars.
Right.
Ybor goes back.
What's his first name?
Hold on.
Okay.
It goes back.
Okay.
We gotta go back.
Oh, okay.
We gotta go back to guava and cigars.
Guava's involved?
Guava.
Wow. Okay, let's go.
Now, for those of you that don't know, guava is a fruit. It's a very sweet fruit that you can make into jellies and jams and things like that, or you could just eat it straight up. But yeah, it's like a sweet fruit. A little bit tart.
Here's a helpful tip. If you want a cool snack, I recommend having cheese. I personally like sharp cheeses, a cracker, and then guava jelly.
Or if you have Cheese Ritz crackers and you put a slice of guava jelly or jam in between that, that's what our grandma used to make. Now, let's talk about Gavina Gutierrez. Okay? So, Ybor City would not have come into existence without its direct result from the failed guava trees that were being grown in New York at the time from Spanish immigrant Gavino Gutierrez.
Well, that explains everything. It's New York.
Yes.
Guava trees are not made for the North.
For sure, no way. So he was a civil engineer, but he was employed by the city of New York to grow these fruits. Okay. So the fruits were not growing, obviously. And the canning firm and packing firm of this fruit in the mid 1880s ended up moving over to Tampa because they heard so many guava trees were growing in Tampa.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were looking to add the company's product, and then they set them out in November of 1884. It was a super long trip, and the railroad line to Florida was running through the plant system, which only went from almost like to Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. That's like about the area that it would go to.
In my mind, all I'm wondering is like, how did they know the guava trees were growing better there? Is it competition? Was it that someone took a vacation there and then they stumbled into this magical forest where no one was and they were hungry and then they took the nearest fruit and they found out, oh, it's guava?
What survive? A great question. If that's how they survive on very sugary fruit. And
I've never had raw guava before.
I haven't had raw guava either. I don't know. But we'll try some after this episode.
If anyone knows what raw guava tastes like, talk about it in our comments.
Yeah. So the trip only took them to about Jacksonville, and then you have to take a steamboat connection, which we've talked about in previous episodes about the connection between like when the canals were first starting and the steamboats that were around that would take you like all the way from wherever to Miami and then down and down and down and down, right?
Mm-hmm. I can imagine a steamboat, Willie.
A steamboat, which is free now. Disney doesn't own it anymore.
We freed Willie.
He freed Willie. Now, they had taken the steamboat all the way down to Tampa Bay area, and that's where they had added to it. And now the steamboat connection went down to St. Johns River, to Sanford, Florida, which is present-day Orlando.
Oh.
Now, Gutierrez took the rest of the trip across the state by stagecoach.
Oh, man. For real.
Yeah, that's dusty.
It's hot. It's wet.
It's wet.
It's wet.
That's mucky. Mm-hmm. And then there was like an isolated rail line, which was the South Florida Railroad, right? Oh. Now, this connected Sanford and Tampa at the time. And then... and what's funny is that railroad was completed less than a year before Gutierrez had visited.
Oh, untested.
So it was like, yeah.
Uncharted. Will the railroad survive?
Railroads that are just built.
I mean, hey, it's new, it's high tech.
Sure, yeah. So he didn't find any commercial quality guavas that were isolated in the village of Tampa at the time. At the time, it was a village. Okay. And the community's main commercial activities were fishing and shipping off Florida goods and things like that. You know, normal trade activity that happened in South Florida. Because,
simple life.
Exactly. So in South Florida, for those of you that don't know, South Florida is a huge agricultural state, mainly dealing in citrus, which if you know, citrus came from Asia and ended up getting imported here because of some sale of whatever, yada, yada, yada. You know, we've talked about it before. But that's what would normally be exported out of Florida is farming goods, right?
That's why I feel like in Florida, we don't have a lot of like building architecture kind of historical
It's just now
spaces.
That we're starting to get a lot of building in Davie, a lot of apartments are getting built now,
right? And
it's those, I always forget the term for it, but it's like, you know, the apartments are on top and the workspaces are at the bottom and whatnot.
But what I'm saying is we don't have like a lot of our history in stone, if that makes sense, because so much of our history
like London.
Right. It's not London. It's not France. It's not your mom's underpants.
Whoa, don't talk about our mom like that. It's not your mom, it's ours.
Yeah. It's all about the land. It's all about that agriculture and trees and stuff that we can't necessarily like keep. You know? No one builds statues of trees.
Well,
Why don't we?
You know what they didn't build a statue of?
What? Did I segue?
Vicente Martinez Ybor.
Okay.
Now, Gutierrez returned to New York by sea, stopping on the way to visit his friend, Vicente Martinez Ybor. And this is where he was living at the time, which was Key West, not too far off. Well, actually super far out, north. Anyway, so Ybor was a fellow Spaniard who had built up a lot of cigar making operations in Havana, Cuba. Mm-hmm. And this was based on his El Príncipe de Gales, which is the Principle of Wales. Now, that's the brand, the original Cuban brand of cigar that Ybor had created.
It's literal Wales, right? It's not like the country Wales?
No, Wales. Yes. Okay. No, not Wales, the country, just Wales.
Okay.
Now, Ybor had provided a lot of support and assistance to Cuban revolutionaries fighting against Spanish colonial rule, which was like, it wasn't a well-known fact, but as we continue, you'll see how the cigar business in Ybor really did assist the Spanish-American War and the fight against this Cuban Revolution that was going on.
Interesting.
Now, he had escaped from Cuba with his family in 1868 to avoid being arrested and killed by Spanish authorities. Ybor had rebuilt a successful business in Key West, and in the early 1880s, there was a lot of like high cost and labor because a lot of things had to get imported from overseas. Land links were like decades away. You know, like all this trade that we see now was extremely difficult back in the 1880s. And he was trying to look for new places to relocate his business. Mm-hmm. So he was going to cities like Mobile, Alabama, Pensacola, Florida, Galveston, Texas, and he had offered a land and other concessions to attract Ybor's favorites to their town, but no one wanted this cigar business from this Spaniard Cuban man, you know?
Little did they know Cuban cigars will be highly
illegal.
Just like Ybor.
Just like Ybor.
I wonder what he did. I wonder why they didn't want him there.
Well, because he was fighting the revolution.
Oh, duh.
So he had learned.
This is what I love about the United States. It's like we have all these rebels in here and all these people that are just like, you know, criminals, like Zorro.
Sick. Okay.
He was in a... Well, I don't know. Whatever.
Well, Gutierrez had learned about Ybor's plans to relocate, right? Which, obviously, when you're doing business, this is like when you take the time to go and be like, I got a nice plot of land here for you that I want some business to go to. So he had mentioned Tampa as a possible relocation spot. And Ybor was super intrigued, and he was... and also a man named Ignacio Haya, who was a visiting Spanish cigar manufacturer from New York, who was also looking for a new place to locate his cigar factory.
Isn't
Haya the hotel? The Haya place? Haya.
Is it a chain? Is it literally named after him?
It has to be. It's the exact same spelling. So Haya and Ybor had boarded the next available steamship, sailing for Tampa, and arrived the next day. They agreed that Tampa was an excellent location for cigar production because it was a lot of untapped land, that it was near enough to Cuba to import Cuban tobacco, and then it would be quick and cheap because of how short the distance was by sea. And then the climate was like nice, warm, and humid. And for those of you that knew anything about cigar production, you need the humidity to have a good roll on that cigar, okay?
So they decided to tap that?
Tap that. Nice, Joko. You know, every time you tend to have these moments. Yeah. These moments, tap that.
I don't understand.
Anyways, of course, stay ignorant. So then I'm original. So it was like a great area that was close, and then the plant's new railroad line would make it easy for the ship to take out finished cigars to all over.
All over?
Yes. Like the U.S.?
Okay.
Now, Ybor had continued to negotiate with other cities while opening this Tampa business talk, because like nothing was fully finalized at the moment, and eventually ended up being in Tampa practically permanently. Yeah, so months later in September of 1885, Ybor and Haya had set out on a fact-finding mission, meaning that they wanted to see the most promising relocation sites for their business, and hoping to finalize the deal and move all of their operations over to Tampa officially.
Wow.
Now, their visit to Tampa, there was a price for 40 acres. Ybor was interested in buying from John T. Leslie, who was one of the landowners, just a landowner, for $9,000, and Ybor was only willing to pay $5,000.
Yeah, Leslie, you're overselling your land.
Overselling your land.
The landlord to overdo it.
For sure. So he hoped to do some face-to-face negotiations.
Yeah.
And then they facilitated an agreement, but neither side was willing to budge on the pricing of it. Gotta love that stubborn nature. At an impasse, almost, Ybor and Haya were prepared to move on to their next site, which would have been Texas. So because the negotiations were going so poorly.
Sorry. Yay, Texas.
Yay, Texas.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Deep in the heart of Texas. Okay, right.
Yeah. If you're from Texas.
Sick.
We know.
All right. Well, here's the tea.
Yes.
So they were literally
like Texas.
Okay. Nope, that would be Britain because anyway. Tea. Boston Tea Party?
Tea for Texas?
Okay.
T-bone steak?
No, you are pescatarian. Don't
and I know that.
Shut up. So as Haya and Ybor were literally about to board the train to leave Tampa because negotiations were going so poorly. All of a sudden, out of left field,
Leslie died
in 1885. Nope.
Okay.
A man named W.B. Henderson offered to subsidize the 4,000 difference in the price of land which Ybor wished to buy. So what he did, yeah, I know, talk about money. So basically he offered him almost like an additional amount of land that would have cost an extra $4,000, but only cost him his original $5,000.
How was he able to do that? So he didn't buy it from Leslie dude.
No, he went to W.B.
Henderson also
offered the land. He was like, this is going to be some good stuff. Buy my land.
Interesting.
You say interesting. I say money talks.
Right.
Money talks. Anyways, so W.B. Henderson had offered the 4,000 difference, and he was like, hey, Leslie's land, here's $4,000 more for this land that Leslie owns. And I'm going to give you that $4,000 because I want your cigar business here.
So he invested in the cigar.
Invested.
I get
now,
it
what's
now.
funny is
Okay.
Ybor super agreed to this. And he quickly moved to purchase 50 more adjoining acres because,
Ybor
of course, he
did
got a
not
good
have
price. He got a good price. So because he got a good price, he bought an additional 50 acres because it's like, well, now I got the extra cash. And then Haya bought his own smaller little piece of land, which we'll get into.
And he built a hotel on it.
So they moved their cigar business over to Ybor City. Now, because they moved the cigar business over to Tampa, which was not yet Ybor, it became a cigar making town. Now, this job was known as tabacayeros.
Ooh, I'm imagining tobacco cowboys.
Well, the tabacayeros are literally, the translation is tobacco workers. Okay.
Oh,
so that's
not as cool, but that's okay.
So the tosedores, the tosadores, they would roll the finished cigars, and they thought of themselves as more of an artist than a worker, which at the time was very true because cigars, especially now, are seen as a like a fancy thing, you know, a cigar rather than a cigarette. Like a cigarette is not seen so much as upper class as it used to be, if that makes sense, because I used to see many paintings and photos and things like that. You have a cigarette, it's a very like sleek and cool thing to smoke, right? But cigars, which were more expensive because they were so well handcrafted and made so especially with the Cuban tobacco, that these were people who were taking the time to hand roll with these leaves all of these cigars.
Very good branding.
Very good branding. Very good branding. So they were artists in their trade. And they even had a manner that was reminiscent of an artisan's guild in old Europe because it was such a fine craft at the time.
Wait, what?
They had built up like an artisan's guild for themselves because they were doing such a special skill for the U.S.
Incredible.
So the beginners had trained through lengthy apprenticeships, almost like a violin creator, right? Think of it like that.
I think of cigars and I don't think about that at all. I'm like, it's a factory. Like you see them at gas stations sometimes.
Exactly.
So that's incredible.
It is. And they would become like the masters were known as toquedor. So like that would be like the master of cigar rolling, right? And in Key West was home to thousands of trained cigar rollers, and that was around like 1885. And then in contrast to Tampa, which was a small town population of only about 3,000 people, and none of the residents were cigar workers at the time, Ybor would have to convince potential employees to leave Key West and come to Tampa.
So that was a huge...
Sometimes. Exactly. That was a huge thing. So a bunch of Cuban tabacalleros were coming over to Tampa on goodwill because it's, you know, the brethren.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. I love that. I'm going to start my own name. I like your style. I'm going to be a master cigar roller here. And I'm going to buy my own land. And I'm going to be awesome. Thank you, WB Henderson?
WB Henderson.
Thank you, WB Henderson. Let me just buy all of Tampa and start rolling.
He invested in something that looked incredible. So Ybor's idea was to build a modified company town. Ybor had such a vision, and he would begin to create casitas that are, for those of you that don't know, casitas are just like small wooden homes, right? Now these are shotgun homes. We know them as pioneer homes, right? And he built about 50 casitas so that it would entice people to move in and live there permanently and to grow Tampa a little bit more, at least the area that he was in.
And for those of you who don't know, casita literally translates into like little home.
It's literally little house. So on April 13th of 1886, Haya's factory produced the first Ybor City cigar. Now they produced the first Ybor City cigar, and Ybor's factory followed suit a few years later. And at the time, they still had less than 100 employees behind them.
Wow.
Yep.
100 employees to create one cigar.
Mm-hmm. Now,
I'm sure that's not how it went, but you
know. Now, later within the same month, there was the Great Fire of Key West.
Ooh, I didn't know there was a fire.
There was a Great Fire of Key West. We know the Great Fire of Chicago, but there's a Great Fire of Key West.
This is not about Chicago.
It's not about Chicago. This is about Key West. Now, hundreds of homes.
Key West?
Key West. The Great Fire of Key West.
Okay.
That's what I said. Had caught fire. Now, hundreds of homes and several cigar factories were victims of this fire, which meant what?
Moving up north to the city.
Moving up. So all of these tabacalleros had decided to go over to Tampa And it also encouraged several Key West cigar manufacturers to move over to Ybor City and relocate altogether. Now, the cigar makers in New York and Cuba also took note, and they were like, wow, all these people are moving over to Ybor. That's wild. Let me as well. So there were there were so many more jobs that were to be offered, and that was like the key point, right? This was a huge part in the Cuban Revolution. This was a giant part in finding like this almost like familial coded kind of area, because you wanted to immigrants were getting connected to other immigrants, because this is what we know. We are not home. We need to find people that kind of feel like home, that I can trust, right? Because I know that if I work with someone and they're like, hey, I'm Cuban, I'm like, no way, no, hug, whatever. And that's basically what was going on culturally. This was a huge boom for Cubans in Ybor City, and Spaniards and actually a lot of other cultures that were moving into Ybor. So early Ybor, 1886 to 1901. had one of the world's largest cigar factories that was built in 1902.
Wilhelmina opted in to help us with this episode. She wants to help read the history here.
Yes, for sure. So Tampa was your typical boom town, right? Something new came in, created a lot for the economy, and boom, more things were happening. So people would come to the city to specifically find work. By 1887, Tampa city leaders had expressed concern of the lack of trained police force because it was such a rapidly growing place to live. So it's like, ooh, who's regulating this stuff here, man?
Yeah. No one's stopping at the stoplights.
Ooh, because there's stoplights in 1886.
Yeah.
Here in Ybor City.
Why else would we need
where
police?
The life is great and the girls are pretty.
Okay.
No? Okay, anyway.
Was that the saying?
No.
Oh.
Because of the status of, like, it became a city within a city because it was, like, growing so fast. Oh, wow. So by the turn of the 20th century, Ybor City had many fine brick buildings and paved streets, street lights, street cars, and it all connected into Tampa and near the communities. And then it kept expanding and creating social opportunities and cultural opportunities to grow. So because of the rapid growth, there was also a huge diversity within Ybor City. So cool. The Tampa City budget was not the only number that experienced tremendous growth within Ybor, and it was like less than 800 residents in 1880. Then the population of Tampa had risen to over 5,000 in 1890. Ooh. And then in 1900, it was almost 16,000 residents. This is why the police were so worried about the growth in Tampa. Now, the vast majority of these new residents were actually just immigrants that had moved into Ybor City for work, because immigrants, they get the job done. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you.
Thank you, Hamilton.
And other rap artists that contributed to that phrase.
Yeah.
That wasn't Hamilton's phrase.
It wasn't Hamilton's
phrase. It was
phrase.
A lyric.
It wasn't our founding fathers' phrase.
No, it was a lyric. Now, there were a few things that had happened. So one factor that expedited the city's growth was the U.S. immigration policy of the time. And so thousands of immigrants from all over the world were able to move in, and centers like Angel Island and San Francisco, and Ellis Island in New York City, which Ellis Island is where our great-grandparents had moved into to later move into Illinois from the Czech Republic. A lot of people that were coming in did not have cigar making experience. They were unable to break into the tightly self-regulated industry. And as they tried to learn Spanish, which was the language in Ybor City.
That is so cool. Okay.
And English.
Of course.
The language of the rest of Tampa.
Mm-hmm. We had Henderson, and we had
Haya?
No.
What?
Wait. Leslie.
Whatever. Leslie's fine. We bought his land. It's done.
They were English people.
But if they couldn't find opportunities within the cigar making business, they ended up opening other businesses catering to the cigar factories. So this included grocery, clothing, general goods stores, cigar boxes, and cigar box art firms. So this also included vegetable and dairy farms.
You're selling cigar boxes to cigar makers?
Cigar boxes you need someone to make the cigar boxes for the cigar makers. Rather than selling a cigar.
Okay.
So the vegetable and dairy farms also established rural areas a few miles east of the city. Now, the Cuba Libre. Okay. Jose Marti.
Of course.
Jose Marti was at the center of Ybor City Cigar. So he would go to the cigar companies and he would express the philosophy of the revolution for the Spanish-American War and all of these different things. So he would go and basically express what was happening. Because if you know anything about Jose Marti, which you can listen to, we have a previous episode about him, that he would create one of the news outlets that would be one of the only forms of news that would go out to Spanish-speaking people throughout the United States. And he would travel from place to place to inform people and enlighten people about this is what's going on. You need to know this, and would assist with that understanding and with that cultural benefit that was going on.
And how important is that in a time before the internet? Like now... We're so lucky. I mean, I think we're over inundated with information, but like, imagine leaving your home and not knowing what's going on back there. Like, you have no way of quickly accessing that information.
Right.
And he's giving that.
Exactly. And when Cuba had seemed to like erupt in the early 1890s, Ybor City became a vital source of funds, equipment, and inspiration for the independence seekers. So there was the El Día para la Patria, which is 1 day for the homeland. And that was donating to 1 day per week to the Cuban cause. It became a patriotic duty for Tampa's Cuban population, with some of their Italian, Jewish, and even Spanish neighbors chipping in.
Oh, that's really cool. Everyone working together.
Yes, and Jose Marti was known as one of the apostles of the Cuban independence. And as he visited West Tampa, he would do the speeches in the steps of Ybor factories. And his newspapers were reprinted throughout the U.S. for people in those factories as well. Now, something that's really cool that I wanted to mention as a part of the cigar rolling, so the tabaqueros had something called el lector. Okay, a lector is the reader, right? This would be to entertain.
I heard about this.
This would be to entertain cigar workers, because if and we'll put some pictures up that are from that we had found like through Wikipedia and things like that. But it's, there's rows and rows and rows of tables and chairs of cigar workers, and then there is a man sitting on a chair with a giant piece of newspaper, and he is reading to these people while they're working, not only to keep them updated and informed, but to, as there's, no radio. They didn't have radio then. So, or at least within the factory. So that would be someone who sat perched in an elevated platform of the cigar factory and just read to the workers to stimulate their minds as they were working.
Like a podcast. Actually, there's an awesome, I forgot what it's called, but it's about like jobs that don't exist anymore. Yeah. And it's a comedic podcast, and they go into this job.
Well, yeah. It's because it was so cool, because not only are you reading newspapers, no. You were also reading romance novels, adventure novels, right? And because most Ybor people were interested in politics, the lector would then usually move on to political treaties, writings about current events in Cuba or Spain or other countries. I mean, what's crazy is these people were so well informed of the world around them, and also extremely entertained by romance. But they would read like Don Quixote, Anna in the Topics, and then
in the Tropics.
And in the Tropics, which was set in Ybor City. That was a book that was written that was set in Ybor City.
What?
And then Anna Karenina. And then it became a system for the cigar workers to not only read and be exposed to classic literature, but also to be up to date with political philosophy and current events in both Ybor City and around the world. So these were very well-cultured and well-informed folk.
And the factory owners, managers must know, too, that if you're keeping your people entertained and informed, like, they're going to... No?
Well, that was a huge issue with some of the factory owners.
I would think, like, when I listen to a podcast, I work better.
Well, because your factory workers were so well informed of the political climate and things going on within the economy, it assisted in the quote-unquote radical views that some of them had. So these lectors would remain fixtures in Tampa cigar factories until 1921, when several owners had negotiated the removal of the lectors as a part of an agreement to end the labor strike that was going on because they were so well informed politically. So the end of the bitter strike in 1931 happened, and workers in all Ybor City and West Tampa cigar factories were forced to agree to the removal of lectors. So that was by 1931. We're going to go post-World War II. So after World War II, Ybor City, actually several factors played in the role to relocate outside of Ybor City for some more economic opportunities.
Interesting.
Yeah. So one of the demands, which was cigars, which started to boom again after World War II because all these men were coming back from war.
Yeah. We all know the old cartoons. There's a cigar and it's chunky and it's in the war man's mouth. The veteran's mouth.
And the Veterans Administration encouraged this trend by offering like mortgage loans and new homes and very favorable rates to returning vets to come back into Tampa. So the cigar business was not as highly, I guess, seen as it was before, but it was extremely needed. And there was urban renewal that happened in the 1950s and the early 1970s to contribute to more people assisting Tampa in rebuilding. In the 1980s is when they a lot of cigar factories had ended up getting torn down. And in the 1980s was a huge advocacy for what's that word? Protecting history.
Okay.
And basically assisting the town in becoming a historic place to advocate and to keep the history alive.
That's crazy. And yeah, there's a lot of brick. There's luckily a lot of plaques. Not everything is still standing. But there is so much. We walk past so much history in Ybor. We didn't get to go to a museum yet, but that's next on the list. Yeah.
Well, that's Ybor City.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot because the history is so rich. And
it's interesting to hear how it fluctuates as time goes.
For sure.
Yeah. Something so highly regarded as an art form kind of floating away and then coming back and changing a little bit.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
It's a bittersweet ending for Ybor, isn't it? I know normally we're what? At the end of an episode, we're oh.
We can still do it.
But yeah, that is Ybor. I highly recommend visiting Tampa and visiting Ybor. The history is so rich, and especially if you're Cuban like us, we visited Isla de Cuba, which is basically you go to Cuba, like we said at the top of the episode. You are literally on Cuban land, and you don't need a passport to do that. And you get to see a beautiful statue of Jose Marti, and you get to see
a lot of
inscription.
roosters.
A lot of roosters, a lot of chickens, and you get to see a lot of beautiful plants and things like that.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Well, next time join us for our haunted episode where we talk about the Cuban Club.
I'm very excited.
I am very excited as well. So my beautiful and glorious creatures, please make sure to join us next time. My name's Alexandra.
And I'm Angelica.
This is Legends of Yesterday. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.